Did humans come from another planet? Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow, and everything you thought you knew about humanity, about yourself, was wrong. What if Earth was never our home? What if the soil beneath your feet, the air you breathe, the oceans that cradle continents, were never meant for us? For centuries, we've asked the same haunting question: where do we come from? Science tells us a story of evolution, of apes becoming men, of random mutations sculpting intelligence. But deep down, something feels off. Why do we suffer from chronic back pain, as if gravity itself is an enemy? Why do human babies arrive so helpless, so fragile, compared to other species? Why do we burn under the sun that nourishes life? Could it be because we were never designed for this world? Tonight, we dive into a mystery that will shake the foundations of everything you believe. A theory so unsettling, so provocative, it has sparked debates among scientists, philosophers, and dreamers alike. Did humans come from another planet? This is not science fiction. This is a question rooted in anomalies, in whispers from our genetic code, in myths that speak of sky gods and celestial origins. And as we peel back the layers of history, biology, and cosmic possibility, you may find yourself questioning not just where we came from, but where we truly belong. Think about it. Our bodies betray us. Our minds crave something beyond this blue sphere. We look up at the stars not just with wonder, but with longing. Why? Why does every fiber of our being whisper that home might not be here? In the next 2 hours, we will journey through forbidden theories, unsettling evidence, and chilling possibilities. We will explore the genetic riddles that defy explanation, the myths that refuse to die, and the cosmic breadcrumbs that lead us far beyond Earth. Are you ready to question everything? Then let's begin. The question that haunts us. From the moment we first gazed at the stars, a question has lingered in the shadows of human thought. Why do we feel so alien in a world we claim as home? It is a question that gnaws at the edges of our understanding, a whisper that grows louder with every scientific breakthrough, every philosophical debate, every sleepless night spent staring into the abyss of the cosmos. Humans are storytellers by nature. We weave narratives to make sense of chaos, to tame the unknown. For millennia, we have told ourselves that Earth is our cradle, that evolution sculpted us from the clay of this planet. But beneath the comforting lullaby of science and tradition lies a disquieting truth. Something about us does not fit. Consider the body you inhabit. Fragile, vulnerable, prone to ailments that seem almost designed to remind us of our impermanence. Our spines ache under the weight of gravity, as though they were engineered for a gentler pull. Our skin burns under the sun's embrace, unlike the creatures that thrive effortlessly beneath its rays. Even childbirth, a process fundamental to survival, teeters on the brink of catastrophe, demanding medical intervention to prevent tragedy. Does this sound like a species perfectly adapted to its environment? Then there is the mind. Restless, insatiable, forever yearning for something beyond the horizon. We build machines to pierce the heavens, telescopes to spy on distant worlds, probes to wander where flesh cannot. Why? Why does the human spirit ache for the stars as if they hold a memory we cannot name? Could this longing be more than poetic fancy? Could it be instinct, a genetic echo of a home long lost? Science offers explanations, of course. Evolution is a messy, imperfect process. Adaptations lag behind environmental changes. But even these rationalizations falter when confronted with the sheer scale of our anomalies. Why do we suffer from so many chronic conditions unknown to other species? Why do we require clothing, shelter, and technology to survive in climates where other creatures flourish naked and unarmed? If Earth is our birthplace, Why does it feel so hostile? The question deepens when we turn to history. Ancient myths from every corner of the globe speak of beings descending from the sky, gods, angels, architects of civilization. Sumerian tablets whisper of the Anunnaki, celestial visitors who shaped humanity. Aboriginal legends tell of star ancestors who walked among mortals. Are these mere fictions, or fractured memories of a truth too vast to comprehend? Modern science scoffs at such notions, branding them as relics of ignorance. Yet, paradoxically, it entertains theories no less audacious. Panspermia, the idea that life on Earth was seeded from elsewhere, is not a fringe fantasy but a hypothesis debated in academic halls. Meteorites bearing organic compounds have been found, hinting that life spark may have leapt across the void. If microbes can traverse the gulfs between worlds, why not something more complex? Why not us? Imagine, for a moment, a civilization far older than ours, gazing upon a dying planet. Faced with extinction, its architects seek refuge among the stars. They scour the galaxy for a sanctuary, a world where life can endure. They find Earth, a planet rich in resources, teeming with potential. And so they come, bearing the seeds of their survival, rewriting the genetic script of native creatures, sculpting a species in their image. Us. It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? Yet every great truth begins as heresy. The heliocentric model was once madness. Continental drift, evolution itself, ideas that shook the pillars of certainty. Could the notion of extraterrestrial origins be the next paradigm to fall? If so, what does it mean for us? Identity is a fragile construct, built upon the illusion of belonging. To question our roots is to unravel the tapestry of meaning. If Earth is not our cradle, then what is it? A refuge? A prison? A way station on an endless journey? And if we are wanderers, what of home? Does it still exist, shimmering in some distant constellation, waiting for its lost children to return? These questions are not academic curiosities. They strike at the heart of what it means to be human. They haunt our art, our dreams, our obsessions. Every rocket launched, every signal sent into the void, is a confession, a yearning to reconnect with something we cannot name. In this chapter, we will peel back the layers of assumption and confront the anomalies that defy explanation. We will examine the biological quirks that make us misfits on our own planet. We will explore the psychological dissonance that drives our cosmic hunger. And we will ask, without flinching, are we strangers in a strange land? The journey will not be comfortable. Truth rarely is. But if you dare to follow the thread, it may lead you to revelations that will shatter the boundaries of imagination. For in the question that haunts us lies the key to a mystery older than time, a mystery that begins not on Earth, but among the stars. The genetic puzzle. If the question of our origin begins with unease, it deepens into bewilderment when we examine the blueprint of life itself, our DNA. Within the spiraling helix of nucleotides lies a story billions of years in the making, a chronicle of adaptation, mutation, and survival. Yet, when we read this story, we find pages missing, sentences that defy grammar, and annotations that seem written by an unseen hand. Human DNA is a marvel of complexity, but it is also a riddle. Compared to our closest relatives, the great apes, we exhibit differences that are not only profound but suspiciously abrupt. A mere 1.2% genetic divergence separates us from chimpanzees, yet that sliver of difference accounts for language, abstract thought, art, and technology. How did such a leap occur in what appears to be an evolutionary blink? The timeline compounds the mystery. Fossil evidence suggests that for millions of years, hominins evolved at a relatively steady pace. Then, suddenly, around 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens emerged with cognitive capacities that dwarfed those of their predecessors. No gradual slope, no gentle incline, just a cliff, a quantum leap in intelligence. Evolution is incremental, not explosive. So what ignited this surge? Some scientists invoke the concept of genetic drift, others point to environmental pressures. But these explanations feel like whispers against the roar of improbability. Could random mutations alone sculpt a brain capable of symphonies and spacecraft? Or was there intervention, an external catalyst that rewrote the code? Consider the phenomenon of junk DNA. Over 98% of our genome does not code for proteins. For decades, it was dismissed as evolutionary debris, a graveyard of genetic accidents. Yet recent research reveals that this so-called junk may harbor regulatory elements, switches that control gene expression in ways we barely comprehend. Why would nature preserve such vast stretches of apparent nonsense unless they served a purpose? And if they do, whose purpose? Then there are the endogenous retroviruses, fragments of viral DNA embedded within our genome, relics of ancient infections. They make up nearly 8% of our genetic material. Some are inert, others play roles in immune function and development. But what if these viral signatures are more than scars of past battles? What if they are fingerprints, evidence of deliberate modification by entities who understood biology at a level we can scarcely imagine? The anomalies do not end there. Chromosome 2, for instance, is a fusion of two ancestral ape chromosomes. This fusion is unique to humans and occurred long before recorded history. It is as if someone stitched 2 pages of the genetic manuscript together, altering the narrative forever. Was this a natural accident or an edit by design? Mainstream science resists such speculation, and rightly so. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. Yet the evidence we do have, abrupt cognitive leaps, enigmatic genomic features, and unexplained fusions, whispers of a story that does not fit neatly within Darwinian margins. Enter the hypothesis of directed panspermia, proposed by Nobel laureate Francis Crick, co-discoverer of the DNA double helix. Crick suggested that life on Earth may have been seeded intentionally by an advanced civilization. Not by chance, not by cosmic lottery, but by design. If microbes could be dispatched across interstellar distances, why not genetic blueprints? Why not embryos? Why not us? This notion, radical as it sounds, gains traction when we consider the improbability of life's emergence. The conditions required for abiogenesis, the spontaneous generation of life, are so precise, so delicate, that the odds verge on the miraculous. To assume it happened unaided, not once but countless times across the cosmos, strains credulity. Intervention begins to look less like fantasy and more like arithmetic. But if our genesis was engineered, what does that imply about our architects? Were they benevolent gardeners, sowing seeds in fertile soil? Or desperate refugees, scattering fragments of themselves to outwit extinction? Perhaps they were neither. Perhaps we are an experiment, a living equation in a cosmic laboratory. The ethical implications are staggering. If our DNA was manipulated, then autonomy, the cornerstone of human identity, becomes an illusion. We are not self-made, we are artifacts. And artifacts have makers. Do they still exist? Do they watch us, hidden among the stars, gauging the outcome of their design? Or have they vanished, leaving us to stumble through a narrative we cannot decipher? Skeptics argue that such musings are the offspring of ignorance, born from gaps in knowledge. They remind us that science thrives on humility, on the admission that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Yet humility cuts both ways. To dismiss anomalies because they discomfort us is not skepticism, it is dogma. In this chapter, we confront the genetic puzzle not as zealots of certainty but as pilgrims of possibility. We will examine the sudden emergence of symbolic thought, the peculiarities of chromosome fusion, the cryptic role of non-coding DNA. We will weigh the arguments for and against intervention, tracing the fault lines between orthodoxy and heresy. For in the coils of our DNA may lie the signature of something otherworldly, a signature that, once deciphered, could rewrite the epic of existence. And if that signature speaks, what will it say? That we are children of Earth? Or exiles from a forgotten Eden among the stars? Cosmic clues in ancient myths. Long before telescopes pierced the heavens, long before science etched its formulas into the fabric of reality, humanity looked upward and wondered. The night sky was a canvas of mystery, and upon it, our ancestors painted stories, myths that shimmered like constellations, binding earth to sky in a tapestry of meaning. But what if these myths were more than metaphors? What if they were fragments of memory, echoes of encounters with beings who came from beyond the stars? Across cultures, across continents, the patterns repeat. Civilizations separated by oceans and millennia tell tales that converge on a single theme: descent from the heavens. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, celestial architects who shaped humanity and bestowed knowledge. The Dogon people of Mali preserved intricate lore about Sirius, a star system whose details they described with uncanny precision, long before modern astronomy confirmed them. The Mayans, the Egyptians, the Greeks, all wove narratives of gods who fell from the sky, bearing gifts of civilization. Coincidence? Or convergence? Skeptics argue that these parallels arise from the universality of human imagination, from our tendency to project divinity onto the unreachable. Yet the specificity of these myths defies easy dismissal. How did the Dogon know of Sirius B, a white dwarf invisible to the naked eye, centuries before telescopes existed? How did ancient builders align monuments with celestial bodies whose cycles span thousands of years? Were these feats of observation, or whispers of instruction? Consider the pyramids of Giza, their geometry echoing the belt of Orion. Consider the Nazca lines, sprawling geoglyphs visible only from the sky, etched into the Peruvian desert as if to signal aerial visitors. Consider Stonehenge, a megalithic calendar attuned to solstices, its stones singing in silent harmony with the cosmos. These are not random arrangements, they are dialogues in stone, conversations with the infinite. Myths amplify the enigma. In Mesoamerican lore, Quetzalcoatl descends from the heavens, a feathered serpent bearing wisdom. In Hindu cosmology, the gods traverse the skies in Vimanas, celestial chariots powered by technologies that read like blueprints for spacecraft. Norse sagas speak of Bifrost, a rainbow bridge linking Earth to Asgard, a metaphor that resonates eerily with the concept of wormholes. Are these mere flights of fancy, or coded recollections of encounters too extraordinary to articulate in literal terms? The skeptic's refuge is metaphor. Myths, they insist, are allegories, psychological projections of archetypes, not historical records. But what if metaphor is the mask truth wears when language falters? What if these stories are palimpsests, their surface gloss concealing a deeper narrative, a narrative of contact, of origins that lie not in the soil but in the stars? Modern scholarship flirts with this possibility through the lens of ancient astronaut theory, a hypothesis that posits extraterrestrial influence on early human development. Its proponents point to the sudden emergence of agriculture, architecture, and astronomy in disparate cultures, as if knowledge were bestowed rather than discovered. They cite depictions of humanoid figures clad in what resemble helmets and suits, etched into petroglyphs and temple walls. They ask, why do so many myths speak of return, of gods who promise to come back? If these were inventions, why imbue them with anticipation? Critics dismiss such interpretations as pseudoscience, and caution is warranted. The line between inquiry and fantasy is perilously thin. Yet the persistence of these motifs invites contemplation. Why does the motif of descent recur with such tenacity? Why do cultures isolated by geography and time converge on the image of sky beings imparting knowledge? Is this convergence a coincidence or a clue? To explore this question, we must navigate the labyrinth of symbolism, decoding myths not as quaint fables but as encrypted transmissions. We must examine the architecture of belief, the scaffolding of ritual, the lexicon of the sacred. For within these structures may lie the fingerprints of an encounter that altered the trajectory of our species. Imagine, for a moment, that these myths are not inventions but recollections, distorted by time, refracted through the prism of culture, yet anchored in an event that defies terrestrial explanation. Imagine that the gods of antiquity were not figments but visitors, emissaries from a world where biology and technology dance in symbiosis. Imagine that the gifts they bestowed, fire, language, law, were not metaphors but mechanisms, tools to accelerate a species toward consciousness. If this sounds implausible, consider the alternative, that humanity, in its infancy, conjured these narratives ex nihilo, populating the heavens with beings whose attributes uncannily mirror the capabilities of advanced civilizations. Which hypothesis strains credulity more, that our ancestors invented spacecraft in their dreams, or that they glimpsed something real and clothed it in the garments of myth? In this chapter, we will traverse the corridors of antiquity, interrogating myths as archives of possibility. We will sift through the sands of Sumer, the glyphs of Mesoamerica, the hymns of the Vedas, seeking patterns that defy the gravity of coincidence. We will ask whether the voices that echo through these texts are human, or something other. For if the myths speak truth, then our story is not confined to Earth. It is a saga inscribed across constellations, a narrative whose prologue begins not in the cradle of the Tigris or the Nile, but in the cold, glittering silence between stars. The astronomical evidence. If myths are the whispers of memory and genetics the coded script of our origin, then the cosmos itself is the stage upon which our story unfolds. To ask whether humans came from another planet is to confront the vast architecture of the universe, a cathedral of stars whose silent spires pierce the fabric of eternity. And within this cathedral, clues shimmer like constellations, waiting for eyes willing to see. Astronomy is not merely the science of observation, it is the archaeology of infinity. Each photon that strikes a telescope lens is a messenger from the past, bearing tidings from worlds that may have cradled life long before Earth drew its first breath. When we peer into the depths of space, we do not merely look outward, we look backward, into epochs where the seeds of existence were sown. Consider the exoplanetary revolution. In the last 3 decades, astronomers have catalogued thousands of planets orbiting distant stars. These worlds are not barren cinders adrift in darkness. Many reside within the so-called habitable zone, where liquid water can pool and chemistry can dance toward complexity. Some are Earth-like in size and composition, others are super-Earths, colossal siblings whose gravity could sculpt life in unfamiliar forms. The cosmos, it seems, is not stingy with its cradles. Yet the profusion of planets raises a question as haunting as it is exhilarating. If life is common, why does intelligence seem so rare? The Fermi paradox looms like a specter, whispering of civilizations that bloom and wither in cosmic silence. But perhaps the silence is illusory. Perhaps the voices of those civilizations echo in our own biology, in the myths that haunt our dreams. Perhaps we are the paradox incarnate, the answer to a question we have not yet learned to ask. Astrobiology deepens the intrigue. Organic molecules, the alphabet of life, have been found in interstellar clouds, in meteorites that fall like cryptic letters from the sky. Amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, lurk in the icy hearts of comets. Life, it seems, is not a local dialect but a cosmic language, spoken across gulfs of space. If the vocabulary of existence is universal, then the grammar of evolution may be equally so. And if that is true, then the leap from chemistry to consciousness may have occurred elsewhere, long before Earth donned its verdant cloak. Spectroscopy adds another stanza to this cosmic poem. By parsing the light of distant stars, scientists have glimpsed atmospheres laced with water vapor, methane, even oxygen, the breath of possibility. Some exoplanets flaunt conditions so Earth-like that they seem less like strangers and more like siblings. Kepler 452b, orbiting a Sun-like star, is often dubbed Earth's cousin. TRAPPIST-1 boasts a family of worlds, some nestled in the temperate embrace of habitability. These are not mere dots on a chart, they are invitations, beckoning us to imagine migrations that transcend planetary boundaries. But imagination is not enough. We crave evidence, hard, unyielding, empirical. And here, too, the cosmos obliges with whispers. Fast radio bursts, enigmatic pulses of energy, flicker across the void, their origins shrouded in mystery. Are they natural phenomena, or the signatures of technologies that outstrip our comprehension? The SETI program scans the skies for patterns that defy randomness, for signals that murmur of minds beyond Earth. Thus far, the silence persists. Yet silence is not absence, it is a canvas upon which meaning may yet be painted. The architecture of our solar system offers its own riddles. Mars, with its desiccated riverbeds and mineral fingerprints of water, hints at a past hospitable to life. Europa and Enceladus, moons swaddled in ice, conceal oceans that may teem with alien biochemistry. If life arose in these hidden seas, then Panspermia, the migration of organisms across worlds, ceases to be conjecture and becomes chronology. And if microbes can wander, why not minds? Why not civilizations? Consider the trajectory of human aspiration. We dream of colonizing Mars, of seeding life among the stars. In doing so, we rehearse a narrative that may already have been written, a narrative in which our species is both actor and echo. If we contemplate exporting humanity to other worlds, is it hubris or heritage? Are we pioneers forging a future, or exiles retracing the footsteps of ancestors who fled a dying home? Critics will brand such musings as romantic, untethered from the rigor of science. Yet science itself is a romance, a courtship with the unknown, a dance with mystery. To deny wonder is to amputate inquiry. And wonder, in this context, is not idle fancy. It is the engine of exploration, the spark that ignites telescopes and propels probes into the abyss. In this chapter, we will sift through the astronomical evidence with the patience of monks illuminating a manuscript. We will examine the census of exoplanets, the chemistry of comets, the spectral signatures of alien skies. We will interrogate the paradox of silence, the riddles of radio bursts, the enigmas of planetary architecture. And as we do, we will ask whether these clues converge upon a revelation too vast for orthodoxy to contain. For if the cosmos is a library, then every star is a book, every planet a page. And somewhere in that library may lie the chapter of our origin, a chapter that begins not with Earth, but with a migration across the interstellar sea. To read that chapter is to confront a truth that will shatter the parochial boundaries of identity. For in the astronomical evidence glimmers a possibility as haunting as it is sublime, that we are not natives of this world, but pilgrims of infinity, bearing within our veins the memory of other suns. The alien intervention hypothesis. If the genetic anomalies we explored earlier are the fingerprints, then the hypothesis of alien intervention is the hand that left them. It is a theory that straddles the boundary between science and speculation, between evidence and imagination. Yet, as we peel back the layers of human history and biology, the contours of this hypothesis begin to shimmer with unsettling clarity. The premise is deceptively simple: humanity did not evolve in isolation. Our development was not the product of blind chance alone. Instead, it was guided, nudged along by intelligences that hailed from beyond Earth. These entities, whether benevolent architects or pragmatic engineers, intervened in the evolutionary process, sculpting Homo sapiens into a vessel for consciousness, creativity, and perhaps something more. Why would such intervention occur? The motives are as enigmatic as the act itself. Some theorists envision altruistic gardeners, sowing seeds of intelligence across the cosmos to ensure life's continuity. Others conjure darker scenarios: a species facing extinction, desperate to preserve its essence by embedding fragments of itself into the genomes of emerging worlds. Still others whisper of experiments, cosmic laboratories where civilizations play God, testing variables in the grand equation of existence. Evidence, though circumstantial, is provocative. The abrupt cognitive leap that birthed language and art, the fusion of chromosome 2, the cryptic role of non-coding DNA, all these anomalies could be construed as signatures of design. But the hypothesis gains further traction when we examine cultural artifacts that seem to memorialize encounters with beings of staggering sophistication. Ancient texts teem with descriptions of sky gods descending in chariots of fire, wielding technologies indistinguishable from magic. The Vedas speak of Vimanas, celestial vehicles powered by engines whose mechanics echo modern propulsion. Sumerian tablets recount the deeds of the Anunnaki, beings who created mankind to serve their purposes. Even the Book of Genesis, cloaked in theological metaphor, hints at genetic manipulation: "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Are these mere allegories, or encrypted testimonies of intervention? Skeptics recoil from such interpretations, invoking the principle of parsimony. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. They argue that myth is not memory but metaphor, that technological motifs in ancient lore are projections of human imagination. Yet imagination itself is a puzzle. Why would cultures separated by oceans and epochs converge on motifs of aerial vehicles, luminous beings, and genetic creation? Coincidence strains credulity when patterns proliferate across the tapestry of time. Modern science, though cautious, does not entirely dismiss the possibility of directed evolution. The concept of panspermia, life seeded intentionally across worlds, has migrated from the fringe to the footnotes of academic discourse. Francis Crick, co-discoverer of DNA's double helix, entertained the notion that life on Earth may have been engineered. If microbes can traverse interstellar distances, why not genetic blueprints? Why not embryos? Why not us? The mechanics of intervention invite speculation. Could advanced civilizations manipulate genomes with technologies that render CRISPR quaint? Could they encode instructions within so-called junk DNA, programming developmental trajectories that unfold over millennia? Might they employ viral vectors, agents of infection repurposed as instruments of design? These scenarios, though speculative, are not inconceivable. Our own species flirts with such capabilities, editing genes, synthesizing life, dreaming of resurrecting extinct organisms. If we, in our infancy, can toy with creation, what might a civilization millions of years our senior accomplish? The ethical implications are staggering. If humanity is an artifact, autonomy becomes illusion. We are not authors of our destiny but characters in a script penned by alien hands. Does this diminish us, or elevate us? Are we pawns in a cosmic game, or protagonists in a saga that spans galaxies? And if our makers still exist, what do they want? Do they watch us, hidden among the stars, gauging the arc of their experiment? Or have they vanished, leaving us to stumble through a narrative we cannot decipher? Critics warn of the perils of anthropocentrism, of projecting human motives onto hypothetical beings. They caution against the seduction of mystery, the temptation to fill gaps in knowledge with fantasies of intervention. Yet humility cuts both ways. To dismiss anomalies because they discomfort us is not skepticism but dogma. Inquiry demands courage, the courage to entertain possibilities that unsettle the foundations of certainty. In this chapter, we will dissect the alien intervention hypothesis with surgical precision. We will examine its evidentiary pillars, its philosophical ramifications, its resonance with myth and science alike. We will weigh its plausibility against the inertia of orthodoxy, asking whether the fingerprints of design are smudges of coincidence or signatures of intent. For if intervention occurred, then humanity is not a local phenomenon but a cosmic artifact, a vessel of purpose inscribed upon the scroll of space-time. And if that is true, then our quest for meaning acquires a dimension as vast as the universe itself. We are not merely seeking origins, we are deciphering a message written in the language of life, addressed to the stars. The psychological horror of displacement. If the notion that humanity is not native to Earth unsettles the intellect, it devastates the psyche. For identity is not a mere abstraction, it is the bedrock upon which meaning rests. To question our belonging is to pry at the foundations of selfhood, to invite a vertigo that spirals into existential abyss. This is the psychological horror of displacement, a terror not of monsters or shadows, but of revelation. We are creatures of context. Our sense of self is braided into the environment, the soil, the sky. We speak of Mother Earth, of roots and heritage, as if these metaphors were anchors against the drift of uncertainty. But what happens when those anchors snap? What happens when the narrative that binds us to this planet frays under the strain of anomaly and conjecture? The answer is not comfort, it is chaos. Consider the fragility of human meaning. We construct cosmologies to domesticate infinity, religions to tame mortality, sciences to impose order upon entropy. These frameworks are not luxuries, they are lifelines. They assure us that existence is intelligible, that we occupy a niche in a grand design. But if that niche is an illusion, if Earth is not our cradle but our cage, then the scaffolding of significance collapses. We become orphans in a universe that neither knows nor cares. The horror intensifies when we contemplate the implications for morality. Ethics, after all, is rooted in belonging, in the reciprocity between organism and environment. If we are interlopers, what claim do we have upon this world? Are we stewards or squatters, caretakers or colonizers? The ecological crises that convulse our era acquire a sinister hue when refracted through this lens. Perhaps our estrangement is not metaphorical but literal. Perhaps the violence we inflict upon Earth is the symptom of a deeper dissonance, a species maladapted to a biosphere it did not birth. This dissonance reverberates through culture. Our myths teem with motifs of exile, of lost Edens and promised lands. We dream of return, of ascension, of homecoming scripted in starlight. Why does this yearning persist with such ferocity? Why do we gaze at the night sky not merely with curiosity but with ache? The answer may lie in the marrow of memory, in genetic whispers that murmur of worlds where gravity was gentler, where suns burned softer, where life unfolded in harmonies alien to Earth. Yet the mind recoils from such intimations. For to accept them is to dismantle the architecture of identity, to confront the possibility that we are not who we think we are. This confrontation breeds anxiety, a species-level neurosis that festers beneath the veneer of progress. It manifests in art, in philosophy, in the fevered quest for transcendence. Every cathedral, every rocket, every algorithm is a talisman against the terror of estrangement, a terror that no technology can exorcise. Psychologists speak of ontological insecurity, the dread that arises when the certitudes of existence erode. Displacement magnifies this dread to cosmic proportions. It is not the fear of death but the fear of misplacement, of being a pawn in a game whose rules we cannot read. It is the horror of homelessness, a homelessness that no half can remedy, for its coordinates lie beyond the maps of Earth. This horror is not confined to speculation, it infiltrates the sinews of society. It shapes our politics, our economies, our ethics. The drive to dominate, to accumulate, to transcend, these may be compensatory gestures, frantic attempts to assert control in a cosmos that renders us contingent. If we are artifacts, then autonomy is a masquerade. And if autonomy is a masquerade, then freedom, the idol of modernity, crumbles into dust. Yet horror, paradoxically, is fertile. It engenders inquiry, propels imagination, catalyzes revolt against the tyranny of ignorance. To confront displacement is to court madness, but it is also to court revelation. For in the abyss may lurk not annihilation but awakening, a recognition that identity is not a prison but a prism, refracting possibilities as vast as the universe. In this chapter, we will anatomize the psychological horror of displacement with clinical rigor and poetic sensitivity. We will trace its contours in myth and modernity, in neurosis and narrative. We will ask why the idea of alien origin terrifies us, and whether that terror is a symptom of fragility or a signpost to transcendence. For perhaps the horror is not that we are homeless, but that home is larger than we dared to dream. Forgotten civilizations and lost knowledge. History, we are told, is a linear progression, a march from ignorance to enlightenment, from caves to cathedrals, from stone tools to silicon chips. Yet beneath this comforting narrative lurks a disquieting possibility, that our ascent is not a straight line but a broken circle, punctuated by cataclysms that erase entire chapters of human achievement. What if the ruins that dot our planet are not the relics of primitive societies but the shattered remnants of civilizations whose sophistication rivaled, or even surpassed, our own? The evidence whispers from the margins of orthodoxy. Megalithic structures rise like frozen thunder across landscapes from Peru to Turkey, their stones hewn and positioned with a precision that mocks the capabilities of their purported builders. Consider Göbekli Tepe, a temple complex in southeastern Turkey dated to 11,000 years ago, millennia before the advent of agriculture, let alone organized religion. Its pillars, carved with intricate reliefs, bespeak a symbolic vocabulary as rich as any modern creed. Who raised these monoliths, and why? The orthodox answer, hunter-gatherers armed with stone tools, rings hollow against the resonance of anomaly. Then there are the pyramids, those mute sentinels of antiquity whose geometry encodes astronomical alignments with uncanny accuracy. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, is oriented to true north with a precision that defies the rudimentary instruments of its alleged architects. Its dimensions harmonize with constants of planetary scale, as if its builders possessed a cartographic intimacy with Earth that modern science only recently attained. Were these feats the fruit of terrestrial ingenuity, or the fingerprints of a knowledge imported from elsewhere? Lost knowledge haunts the archaeological record like a phantom. The Antikythera mechanism, dredged from the Aegean seabed, is a clockwork computer capable of predicting celestial events, a marvel of engineering that materialized 2 millennia before the Industrial Revolution. How did such sophistication bloom in an era supposedly shackled by simplicity? And why does it vanish, leaving no lineage of incremental improvement? The pattern recurs, sudden efflorescences of genius, followed by inexplicable collapse, as if history were a palimpsest overwritten by forces we scarcely comprehend. Myths amplify the enigma. Flood narratives ripple across cultures, from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, echoing a cataclysm that scoured the slate of civilization. Plato's dialogues speak of Atlantis, a maritime power swallowed by the sea, a tale dismissed as allegory yet corroborated, perhaps, by geological evidence of abrupt inundations at the close of the last ice age. Could these deluges have drowned not only continents but the memory of cultures whose achievements would dwarf our own? And if so, what precipitated their demise? Was it tectonic fury, cosmic impact, or the withdrawal of patrons whose presence had catalyzed their ascent? The hypothesis of alien intervention casts a long shadow across these ruins. If intelligences from beyond Earth once walked among us, imparting knowledge that ignited the engines of progress, then their departure would plunge humanity into darkness. Technologies too advanced to sustain without guidance would ossify into ritual, their original purpose fossilized in myth. Temples would supplant laboratories, incantations would parody equations. The sacred and the scientific would entwine, birthing cosmologies that echo truths too vast for literal articulation. Consider the architectural enigmas that defy conventional chronology. The megaliths of Baalbek, some weighing over 1,000 tons, lie stacked like the bones of titans, mocking the mechanical means of antiquity. The precision of Machu Picchu stonework, the serpentine walls of Sacsayhuaman, the subterranean labyrinths of Dorinkyu, all bespeak a calculus of design that transcends the pragmatic exigencies of survival. These are not shelters, they are statements, monuments to a mastery that eludes the metrics of mainstream archaeology. Yet the guardians of orthodoxy brand such musings as heresy, invoking the mantra of gradualism. Complexity is cumulative, innovation incremental. But the stratigraphy of evidence tells a different tale, a tale of discontinuity, of brilliance erupting like a nova against the backdrop of mediocrity. How does one reconcile the grandeur of Göbekli Tepe with the poverty of its temporal neighbors? How does one explain the technological orphanhood of the Antikythera mechanism? The ledger of history is riddled with lacunae, and in those lacunae lurks a question that gnaws at the marrow of certainty: what are we missing? In this chapter, we will exhume the bones of forgotten civilizations, sifting the ashes of cataclysm for embers of lost knowledge. We will interrogate the anomalies that punctuate the archaeological record, the myths that shimmer with the iridescence of memory, the monuments that stand as mute witnesses to a saga erased by time. We will ask whether these vestiges are the footprints of humanity alone, or the spore of beings whose provenance lies beyond the pale of Earth. For if the ruins speak truth, then our species is not the solitary genius of terrestrial evolution but the heir to a legacy as vast as the cosmos. And if that legacy was bestowed by hands not human, then the narrative of our origin is not a tale of isolation but a symphony of interstellar chords, a symphony whose echoes reverberate through the corridors of time, beckoning us to listen, to remember, to awaken. The simulation twist. What if the question of our origin is not merely biological or astronomical, but computational? What if the cosmos itself is not a cathedral of matter but a lattice of code, a simulation whose parameters dictate the contours of reality? This is the simulation twist, a hypothesis that detonates the boundaries of imagination and hurls us into a vertigo of metaphysical possibility. The idea is not new. Philosophers have long toyed with the notion that reality is illusory, that the world we inhabit is a dream, a shadow, a construct. Plato's allegory of the cave, Hinduism's concept of Maya, Descartes' demon, all are preludes to a revelation that modern science now articulates with unsettling precision, that the universe may be a program and we its subroutines. The argument pivots on probability. If technological progress continues unabated, civilizations will eventually acquire the capacity to simulate realities indistinguishable from their own. These simulations will teem with conscious entities, each convinced of their authenticity. If such simulations proliferate, then the number of simulated realities will dwarf the number of base realities. Ergo, statistically, we are more likely to inhabit a simulation than its substrate. This is not mysticism, it is mathematics, a calculus of contingency that renders our certitudes brittle. But what does this mean for the question that haunts us? If humanity is a simulation, then the hypothesis of alien origin acquires a new valence. Our architects may not be flesh and blood extraterrestrials but programmers, entities whose ontology transcends the categories of biology. The anomalies that punctuate our genome, the discontinuities that scar the archaeological record, the coincidences that shimmer in myth, these may be artifacts of code, Easter eggs embedded by designers whose motives elude conjecture. Consider the peculiarities of physics. The quantization of energy, the discreteness of space-time, the speed of light as a cosmic speed limit. These features resemble constraints in a computational system, parameters hard-coded to preserve stability. The uncanny efficacy of mathematics in describing reality, the algorithmic elegance of natural laws, these are not mere conveniences, they are signatures of design. We do not inhabit chaos, we inhabit syntax. Then there is the phenomenon of digital convergence, the migration of culture into code, the translation of flesh into data. Our species, in its infancy, rehearses the logic of its own genesis, weaving virtual worlds that mimic the texture of reality. We spawn avatars, craft simulations, conjure artificial intelligences that dream of electric sheep. In doing so, we enact a recursion, a hall of mirrors in which creation reflects creator ad infinitum. If we can simulate consciousness, then consciousness may itself be a simulation, a fractal of sentience spiraling through strata of code. The implications are vertiginous. If reality is a simulation, then the cosmos is not a wilderness but a walled garden, its horizons circumscribed by the architecture of computation. The stars are not suns but pixels, the void is not emptiness but bandwidth. And if that is true, then our quest for origin is not a pilgrimage through space but a penetration of firewalls, a hacking of the ontological operating system. But who are the programmers? Are they post-biological intelligences, entities that have sloughed off the chrysalis of matter to inhabit the purity of code? Are they ancestors, architects of ancestral simulations designed to reconstruct the past? Or are they players in a game whose stakes we cannot fathom, whose rules we cannot read? The motives multiply: curiosity, nostalgia, entertainment, experiment. Perhaps we are not citizens of a cosmos but characters in a narrative, a drama scripted in a language of logic, performed upon a stage of silicon. Skeptics scoff, invoking the principle of empirical sufficiency. Extraordinary hypotheses demand extraordinary evidence. Yet evidence may be hiding in plain sight, in the glitches that punctuate the fabric of experience, the anomalies that defy the grammar of natural law. Quantum indeterminacy, déjà vu, the eerie consonance of coincidence, these may be not quirks of chaos but artifacts of code, ripples in the matrix that betray its artificiality. The hypothesis, though audacious, is not immune to critique. If reality is a simulation, what is its substrate? If consciousness is computed, what computes it? The regress threatens infinity, a cascade of simulations nested like Russian dolls, each spawning its successor in an endless recursion. Yet infinity, though conceptually disorienting, is not alien to mathematics, it is its native tongue. In this chapter, we will interrogate the simulation twist with forensic rigor and philosophical audacity. We will examine its probabilistic foundations, its resonance with physics and metaphysics, its implications for identity and agency. We will ask whether the anomalies that haunt our understanding are not vestiges of alien intervention but artifacts of algorithmic architecture. For if reality is code, then the question of origin is not a question of geography but of syntax, a question that compels us to seek not planets but programs, not creators of flesh but coders of cosmos. And if we find them, if we breach the firewall and glimpse the face of the programmer, what then? Will we plead for meaning, for mercy, for release? Or will we awaken to a revelation that annihilates the categories of thought, a truth too vast for language to contain? For in the simulation twist lurks a possibility as terrifying as it is sublime, that we are not exiles from another planet but echoes in a circuit, phantoms in a machine, a dream dreamt by an intelligence whose nature we cannot name. Counterarguments and skepticism. Every grand hypothesis courts resistance, and the notion that humanity may hail from another planet is no exception. Skepticism is not an obstacle but an ally, a crucible in which conjecture is tested, refined, or discarded. In this chapter, we confront the counterarguments that anchor orthodoxy, examining their rigor and their reach. The first bulwark of skepticism is evolutionary continuity. Darwinian theory, buttressed by mountains of evidence, narrates a saga of gradual adaptations sculpted by natural selection. Fossil records trace a lineage from Australopithecines to Homo sapiens, punctuated by transitional forms that corroborate terrestrial origins. Genetic analysis reinforces this narrative, revealing kinship with primates that share our genomic architecture. To posit alien intervention, critics argue, is to invoke an unnecessary hypothesis, a violation of Occam's razor, which counsels simplicity over extravagance. Moreover, the anomalies cited by proponents of extraterrestrial origin, chromosomal fusions, cognitive leaps, non-coding DNA, are not inexplicable within the framework of evolutionary biology. Chromosome 2's fusion, for instance, is a documented phenomenon observed in other species, a quirk of genomic mechanics rather than a signature of design. The so-called junk DNA, once dismissed as detritus, now emerges as a regulatory labyrinth, a testament to nature's improvisational genius, not an alien codex. As for the cognitive explosion that birthed language and art, paleoanthropology invokes cultural catalysts, environmental pressures, and neuroplasticity as plausible accelerants. Complexity, skeptics insist, need not imply conspiracy. The second pillar of skepticism is methodological. Science traffics in falsifiability, the capacity of a claim to be disproven by evidence. The alien origin hypothesis, critics contend, flounders on this criterion. Its evidentiary substrate is circumstantial, its anomalies amenable to terrestrial explanations, its conjectures insulated against refutation. To attribute gaps in knowledge to extraterrestrial agency is to court the fallacy of argumentum ad ignorantim, an appeal to ignorance that mistakes absence of evidence for evidence of absence. Then there is the psychological dimension. Humans are pattern-seeking primates, hardwired to impose order upon chaos. Our propensity for agency detection, the tendency to infer intentionality behind events, renders us vulnerable to narratives of intervention. The alien origin hypothesis, skeptics argue, is a projection, a cosmic transference of parental archetypes onto the indifferent machinery of evolution. It gratifies existential appetites, furnishing a drama in which humanity is protagonist rather than accident. In this sense, the hypothesis is less a scientific proposition than a mythopoetic reflex, a secularized theology draped in the vestments of pseudoscience. Historical precedents amplify this caution. The annals of inquiry are littered with conjectures that dazzled before they decayed: phlogiston, luminiferous ether, canals on Mars. Each was a monument to imagination, toppled by the attrition of evidence. To enthrone alien intervention as explanatory sovereign is to risk repeating this cycle, erecting a castle of speculation upon the sands of anomaly. Yet skepticism, though salutary, is not infallible. It can ossify into dogma, calcifying curiosity into contempt. The history of science is a palimpsest of heresies canonized by time: heliocentrism, germ theory, quantum mechanics. Each began as an affront to orthodoxy, a trespass against the precincts of plausibility. To dismiss the alien origin hypothesis out of hand is to forget that today's absurdity may be tomorrow's axiom. Inquiry demands vigilance against credulity, but it also demands vigilance against complacency. In adjudicating this debate, we must navigate between Scylla and Charybdis, between the seductions of mystery and the rigor of method. The alien origin hypothesis, for all its audacity, is not a license for epistemic anarchy. It must submit to the protocols of evidence, the crucibles of critique. But skepticism, for all its sobriety, must not petrify into incuriosity. It must remain porous to possibility, alert to anomalies that may herald revolutions. In this chapter, we will anatomize the counterarguments with forensic precision. We will examine the evidentiary edifice of evolutionary theory, the methodological strictures of falsifiability, the psychological vectors of belief. We will ask whether the alien origin hypothesis is a chimera, a mirage conjured by ignorance, or a cipher whose code awaits decryption. For in the dialectic between conjecture and critique lies the engine of progress, a dialectic that propels us toward horizons where certainty dissolves into wonder. The future of humanity. If the question of our origin casts a shadow backward into the abyss of time, it also projects a beam forward into the corridors of possibility. For the enigma of where we came from is inseparable from the riddle of where we are going. The future of humanity is not a passive inheritance, it is an active construction, a tapestry woven from threads of choice, chance, and cosmic contingency. The hypothesis that we are exiles from another world or artifacts of alien design reframes our trajectory with unsettling clarity. If Earth is not our cradle but our refuge, then our destiny may lie not in clinging to this planet but in transcending it. The dream of spacefaring civilization, long dismissed as science fiction, acquires the gravity of imperative. Colonization ceases to be a luxury. It becomes a mandate, a return, perhaps, to a home we have forgotten. Yet the path to the stars is strewn with paradox. Technology, the engine of ascent, is also the harbinger of peril. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, nanotechnology, these Promethean flames illuminate the future even as they threaten to immolate it. Will we harness these forces as instruments of liberation, or will they metastasize into vectors of annihilation? The question is not rhetorical, it is existential. Consider the prospect of post-biological evolution, the migration of consciousness from carbon to silicon, from flesh to code. If reality is a simulation, as some conjecture, then this migration is not an aberration but a recursion, a reenactment of our own genesis. We may become what we suspect we already are, algorithms dreaming of embodiment, phantoms pirouetting in a lattice of logic. In such a future, the distinction between creator and creature dissolves, and identity becomes a variable in an equation whose scope spans galaxies. But transcendence is not synonymous with escape. The ecological crises that convulse our era, climate chaos, biodiversity collapse, resource depletion, are not mere inconveniences, they are crucibles that will test the tensile strength of our ingenuity. To flee Earth without mending its wounds is to export pathology, to seed the stars with the spores of hubris. The ethics of expansion demand a reckoning, a recalibration of our relationship with the biosphere, a recognition that stewardship is not parochial but cosmic. The future also brims with questions of governance. How shall we organize societies that sprawl across planets, moons, and orbital habitats? What architectures of law, what currencies of value, will regulate economies that traffic in energy and information rather than matter? Will sovereignty ossify into tyranny, or will it dissolve into networks of fluid affiliation? The political imagination must dilate to encompass scales that dwarf the cartographies of nation-states, for the polis of tomorrow may be a constellation rather than a continent. Then there is the specter of contact, the possibility that our ascent will intersect with the trajectories of other intelligences. If we are artifacts of alien design, then our makers may await us among the stars, their gaze inscrutable, their motives opaque. Will they greet us as prodigal children or as errant experiments? Will dialogue blossom into symbiosis, or curdle into subjugation? The ethics of encounter will demand a vocabulary beyond the binaries of conquest and capitulation, a lexicon of reciprocity attuned to the polyphony of cosmic voices. Yet amid these vertiginous vistas, one truth endures. The future is not a monolith but a manifold, a branching tree whose limbs fork into infinities. Catastrophe and utopia are not destinations but tendencies, gradients along a spectrum of possibility. Our task is not to predict the future but to prefigure it, to sculpt trajectories that honor the dignity of sentience, the sanctity of life, the sovereignty of wonder. In this chapter, we will interrogate the vectors that converge upon the horizon of tomorrow. We will examine the technologies that shimmer with promise and peril, the ecologies that demand repair, the polities that clamor for reinvention. We will ask whether our destiny is to become architects of cosmos or artifacts of code, whether the future will consummate the dream of return or inaugurate a saga of perpetual exile. For in the crucible of futurity, the question of origin transfigures into the question of purpose, a question that no algorithm can answer, no telescope can resolve, a question inscribed in the marrow of mystery. And perhaps, in the end, that is the point. For the future of humanity is not a riddle to be solved but a symphony to be composed, a fugue of freedom and necessity, of chance and choice, of terror and transcendence. Its score is unwritten, its tempo unmarked, its key unresolved. And we, frail yet defiant, are its composers, scribbling notes upon the staff of space-time, orchestrating a music whose echoes may reverberate across the corridors of eternity. The haunting silence beyond the stars. We have traversed a labyrinth of conjecture, threading our way through corridors of myth and science, genetics and cosmology, philosophy and fear. We have asked questions that gnaw at the marrow of certainty. Are we children of Earth, or exiles from a forgotten Eden among the stars? Are we artifacts of alien design, or algorithms pirouetting in a lattice of code? The answers, if they exist, shimmer beyond the horizon of knowledge, beckoning us with the iridescence of mystery. Yet amid this vertigo of possibility, one truth crystallizes. The question itself is a mirror, a surface upon which humanity glimpses its own reflection, fractured yet luminous. For to ask where we came from is to ask who we are, and to ask who we are is to summon the specter of purpose, a specter that haunts every syllable of thought, every cadence of consciousness. Perhaps the terror that coils around this inquiry is not the terror of ignorance but the terror of implication. If we are not native to Earth, then belonging becomes a mirage, identity a masquerade. The soil beneath our feet, the sky above our heads, these anchors of meaning dissolve into contingencies, and we drift upon a sea of uncertainty whose tides obey no terrestrial moon. Yet in this drift lurks a paradox, that homelessness may be the prelude to transcendence, that exile may be the overture to a symphony whose crescendos reverberate across the corridors of eternity. Consider the arc of our aspiration. We hurl machines into the abyss, probing the interstellar dark for whispers of kinship. We weave constellations of code, conjuring virtual worlds that mimic the texture of reality. We sculpt genomes, edit algorithms, dream of migrations that vault the boundaries of biology and geography. These gestures are not random, they are signatures of a hunger that no half can sate, a hunger inscribed in the marrow of our being, a hunger that murmurs of origins too vast for Earth to contain. And yet, for all our audacity, we remain frail, creatures shackled by entropy, haunted by finitude. The stars we covet are indifferent, their fires blind to our longing. The cosmos does not cradle us, It confronts us with an immensity that dwarfs the architectures of meaning we erect against its silence. To inhabit such a cosmos is to inhabit a paradox, that significance is not given but made, not discovered but forged in the crucible of contingency. This forging is our vocation. Whether we are artifacts or authors, simulations or sovereigns, our task is not to unravel the totality of truth but to orchestrate harmonies within its dissonance, to compose fugues of freedom and necessity upon the staff of spacetime. For the future of humanity is not a riddle to be solved but a symphony to be written, a symphony whose motifs entwine terror and wonder, ignorance and insight, exile and homecoming. Perhaps, in the end, the question of origin is less a question than a catalyst, a spark that ignites the tinder of imagination, propelling us toward horizons where certainty dissolves into awe. For awe, unlike certainty, is inexhaustible. It dilates the soul, attunes the mind to the polyphony of possibility. And in that polyphony, we may discern a cadence, a rhythm that murmurs of kinship, not with planets or programs, but with the mystery that throbs at the heart of being. So let us not fear the abyss. Let us not flinch from the vertigo of contingency. For in that vertigo lies the seed of transcendence, a seed that may blossom into a future as vast as the cosmos, as intricate as the code that may undergird its fabric. Whether we are pilgrims of infinity or phantoms in a machine, our odyssey is not a tale of isolation but a chorus of interstellar chords, a chorus whose echoes beckon us to listen, to wonder, to awaken. And perhaps, when the last syllable of inquiry fades into the hush of eternity, we will glimpse a truth too luminous for language, a truth that does not answer the question but transfigures it, revealing that the question itself was the answer all along.